My name is Leah. I'm 23 years old, and 3 weeks ago, I stopped pretending. It happened in a lecture hall. Second row, Sociology of Memory. The professor was speaking, something about generational trauma, and I was just sitting there, taking notes, or at least pretending to. My pen was moving. My body was upright. I looked like everyone else. But inside, it felt like a wall had cracked wide open, and everything started pouring through. Sweaty palms, blurred vision. My heart, hammering like it was trying to escape my chest. I couldn't hear what anyone was saying. Couldn't read the words I'd just written. The lights were too bright. The room was too loud. And worst of all, I couldn't breathe. They said it was a panic attack, that I'd probably been under stress for a while, that it was normal, but nothing about it felt normal. So I left. I packed a small bag, sent a text to my mother that simply said, "I'm coming home," and I took the next train out of the city. I didn't tell my friends. I didn't tell my professors. I didn't even tell myself what I was doing. Not really. I just ran. And that's how I ended up standing in front of my childhood home, keys trembling in my hand, trying to remember how to open a door I had once opened 1,000 times before. It was colder than I expected inside. The house was quiet, but not empty. I could smell cinnamon and dust, laundry detergent, and something faintly floral. Mom must have just left for work. The curtains were drawn, and the hallway lights were off. And then I saw him. He was lying in the doorway of the living room, head on his paws, big golden eyes watching me like I had never left. Max. My breath caught, again, but for a different reason. He had aged. His fur was whiter around the muzzle now, his movements slower, his ears slightly droopier than I remembered. But the moment he saw me, he pushed himself to his feet and padded toward me like I'd only been gone a day. I dropped the bag. "Max." My voice cracked. He didn't bark. He didn't wag his tail in a frenzy. He just leaned into my legs and pressed the full weight of his body into mine, and I broke. I sank to the floor, right there in the entryway. With the door still wide open behind me and the cold air seeping in, I wrapped my arms around the dog I'd grown up with and buried my face in his neck. I don't remember crying. I just remember shaking, like my body was trying to shiver out something it had held too long. Max didn't move. He didn't lick me. He didn't shift or nudge or fuss. He just stayed. And for the first time in weeks, maybe months, I let myself feel it. All of it. The failure, the fear, the weight of pretending to be okay for too long. I don't know how long I sat there, but eventually my legs fell asleep and my forehead was damp with fur and tears. Max exhaled, deep and warm against my neck. "Sorry," I whispered. I didn't mean to disappear. He leaned harder against me. Later that evening, after showering, and eating half a granola bar I found in the pantry, I curled up on the couch under an old blanket. Max climbed up without waiting for permission, something he never used to do, and positioned himself directly against my chest. His breathing was heavy, rhythmic, like a grounding presence I hadn't realized I needed. I tried to scroll on, my phone, but nothing held my attention. Not social media, not the unread messages, not the emails piling up. I stared at them until the screen blurred again, and then I just put it down. Max nudged my arm with his nose. "I don't know what to do next," I told him. "Like, I'm just here, floating." He didn't respond, obviously, but I liked pretending he understood. "You know what's funny?" I whispered, resting my head against the curve of his shoulder. "I've never told anyone how scared I actually am. I just keep saying I'm tired, like that explains it. But tired doesn't even begin to cover it." His ears flicked at my voice, but he didn't open his eyes. When I couldn't breathe that day, I thought I was dying, like my body just decided it was done. And no one noticed. They just kept talking. The words were small. They spilled out of me like steam escaping a pressure valve. I just want to be okay again. But I don't know. How? I'm afraid if I go back, I'll break for real. That this time, I won't come back from it. I closed my eyes. But I can't stay here forever. Max shifted slightly and laid his head across my ribs, his chin heavy, his warmth absolute. Exhaled, a real breath this time. For the first time all day, I wasn't holding it in. That night, I dreamed of being underwater. Everything was quiet, slow, and distant. I was swimming toward something, or someone, but the current was too strong. I couldn't make it. I sank lower and lower, watching the light above me shrink until it was gone. And then, in the dream, a shape moved through the water. Warm, solid, golden. Max. He didn't speak. He didn't swim. He just was. Beside me. Holding me up. When I woke up, the sky outside was gray, and Max was lying beside the couch exactly where I'd left him. Only now, his paw was resting gently across my arm. Like he'd known something. I hadn't. I didn't tell my mom much when she got home that evening. She asked if I was okay, and I said, "Getting there." It was a lie. But not the worst one I'd told. That night, I watched Max while he slept, and tried to remember how it felt to feel whole. Maybe it was still in me, somewhere, buried under the panic and the silence and the guilt. Maybe it just needed time. Or maybe it needed something else. Someone who wouldn't let go, even when I couldn't breathe. It was still raining when I woke up the next morning. Not a summer storm, not something dramatic or cinematic. Just that slow, gray drizzle that turns the world into a muffled version of itself. Max was already awake, lying on the floor next to the couch like a silent sentinel. His eyes opened the moment I stirred, but he didn't move, just blinked, waiting. Like he was letting me decide what kind of day this would be. I sat up slowly, my neck stiff from the awkward angle I'd slept in. My hoodie was bunched beneath me, and my throat felt like sandpaper. I hadn't spoken since the previous afternoon. "Morning," I croaked. Max thumped his tail once. Not in excitement, more like acknowledgement. And somehow, that was enough. The kitchen was quiet. Still no word from Mom. She was giving me space. I knew that. But her absence was another layer of silence I hadn't realized I needed to peel through. I made tea. I didn't drink. Toast. I didn't eat. Then stared at the wall while Max sat, under the table, chin on his paws, watching me. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe it was the way the spoon scraped across the empty mug. Maybe it was the sudden spike in my chest when I glanced at my untouched phone screen. Or maybe it was the yawning sense that I was wasting oxygen in a house I no longer fit into. But I stood up, grabbed my coat, and opened the front door. Max was on his feet in an instant. "I just need air," I said, even though I wasn't sure who I was talking to. He stepped between me and the doorframe. Not aggressively, not with force. Just there. A soft block. A pause. A question. I shook my head. "I'll be fine." Max didn't move. I slipped past him. He followed. The field, behind our neighborhood, hadn't changed much. The old wooden fence was still there, half swallowed by weeds. The trees were still leafless this time of year, brittle skeletons against the sky. I found the little hill I used to sit on as a teenager, the one where you could just barely see the lights from town at night. I sat. Max sat beside me, and the thoughts came. Not all at once. Not loud. Just consistent, like waves, and every one of them pulled me further away from the shore. Why are you here? You failed. You can't go back. You can't move forward. You're just stuck. And everyone knows it. I hadn't spoken about it. Not even to myself. Not clearly. But there it was. A full, vivid thought I'd never dared voice before. It would be easier if I just disappeared. I didn't mean die. Not in a literal way. But vanish. Fade out. Step sideways out of life. Like someone hitting mute on a too loud radio. No more expectations. No more pretending. Just quiet. I didn't say it out loud. But Max moved. He stood up slowly and walked around to face me. Then he sat, directly in front of me, and stared. His eyes were unblinking. Solid, steady, and I cracked again. I'm not okay, I said. My voice was barely a whisper, but I said it. I'm not okay, Max. He leaned forward and pressed his forehead against my knee. I froze. It wasn't a cute gesture. It wasn't him asking for pets or food or attention. It was pressure. Firm. Intentional. Like he was holding me in place. Like he was saying, "Don't disappear. I see you." And then, something happened that scared me more than the panic attacks. More than the blank stares I'd been giving the walls. More than the days of nothing. I felt something. Grief. Hot, sharp, clawing grief. Like I was mourning someone or something. And I hadn't realized it until this exact second. Not a person. Not a thing. Myself. The version of me who used to laugh without guilt. Who danced barefoot in kitchens. Who stayed up late with dreams instead of dread. That version was gone, and I missed her like hell. I reached out and grabbed a fistful of Max's fur, and I didn't let go. He didn't flinch. He just stayed. Let me hold on. Let me tremble. Let me be small and messy and real. It was like trying to cry through cement. The tears wouldn't come, but the pressure was there. Behind my eyes, in my throat, in the space between every heartbeat. And the whole time, Max just kept pressing into me. Warm and present, and completely immovable. We stayed like that until the rain picked up again, and I realized I was soaked through. Back inside, I peeled off my wet coat, dropped it on the floor, and wrapped myself in a towel from the laundry basket. I didn't care anymore about appearances. I was too tired to perform. Max curled up by the radiator. I sat beside him on the floor, legs pulled to my chest, forehead resting on my knees. My phone buzzed from the table. I didn't check it. Instead, I looked at Max. "You knew, didn't you?" I whispered. Before I even let myself know. His ears flicked once. He didn't open his eyes. I don't know what I'm doing. Stillness. I don't know who I am without everything I was trying to be. Silence. I reached for his paw and held it in my hand. "You're the only thing keeping me here." And then, like some divine, surreal answer, he sighed. Not a tired sigh, not an annoyed sigh, a soft, deep, grounding breath that moved through his whole body like an anchor. And I matched it. For the first time in days, maybe longer, I inhaled, fully, and exhaled. Not because I remembered how, but because he did it first. That night, I slept in my old bed for the first time since I'd come back. Max was curled up on the rug beside it, just close enough that I could hear his breathing if I held still, and I did. I lay there, quiet and open-eyed, listening to the rhythm of a life that wasn't pretending. It didn't fix everything. It didn't erase the shadows. But it reminded me I hadn't vanished. Not completely. Not while he was still there. I don't know when it started. That urge to disappear from affection. Maybe it was after the first time I told someone I wasn't okay, and they changed the subject. Or when I finally admitted I needed help, and was met with polite silence and quick goodbyes. Whatever it was, it taught me this. Closeness is dangerous. If someone gets too close, they see the cracks, and cracks mean weakness, so I built walls. Beautiful ones. Efficient ones. I became fluent in half smiles and subject changes. I mastered the art of I'm fine. But Max, he didn't understand walls. He never had. It started with the door. I'd been hiding in my room all morning, pretending to study an old notebook while really just staring at the ink smudges. The sun had come up, and I hadn't opened the blinds. I was still in yesterday's clothes. The air was stale, and there he was. Max. Lying in the hallway just outside the door, one paw barely inside my room. Not whining, not scratching, just waiting. I stood and closed the door. Firmly, quietly. Then I sat on the edge of my bed and exhaled. It wasn't about being annoyed. It wasn't about needing space. It was shame. I felt disgusting. Weak. Like I hadn't earned the right to be comforted. That was the truth of it. When you fall apart long enough, you start believing the pieces aren't worth holding anymore. An hour passed. Then 2. I opened the door again, expecting Max to be gone. Probably lying by the back window or snoring on the living room rug. He wasn't. He was still there. Still waiting. His eyes met mine. Calm. Still. Heavy with something I didn't want to name. Max. Please. I muttered. Not now. He didn't move. I stepped over him and went to the kitchen. He followed. Don't, I said, not looking back. Not today. I turned to grab a glass, and he was there, sitting beside the counter like some loyal statue. No tail wag, no puppy eyes, just presence. And I cracked. Again. Stop following me, I snapped. I'm not worth it, okay? I'm not who I used to be. My voice bounced off the tile and hit the walls harder than I meant it to. Max blinked once. I held the glass tighter than I should have. My hands were shaking again. Damn it. I thought I was past that part. I'm a mess, I whispered. A freaking mess. Max walked over and sat directly in front of me. I mean it. My voice broke. You shouldn't be here. He stepped forward and rested his head against my thigh. And that's when the tears finally came. Not gentle, cinematic tears. The real kind. The ugly kind. Mouth open, breath caught, knees buckling kind. I dropped to the floor and gasped like I was drowning. I wasn't just crying, I was breaking, and Max. He did the only thing he knew. He climbed on top of me, not violently, not frantically, just slowly, deliberately, like he was laying himself across my body as a weight to hold me there. His front paws on my chest, his body warm and heavy, his breath slow against my collarbone. I couldn't breathe, but I didn't want him to move. That's the worst part. I wanted the pressure. I needed it. Like it was anchoring me back into reality. Because if he was still here, if he still believed I was worth touching, maybe I hadn't disappeared yet. It took a while for the sobs to fade. My face was raw. My throat burned. My chest felt cracked open, and Max still hadn't moved. I whispered, "You're heavy, buddy." He exhaled. Didn't shift. I can't breathe. Stillness. But don't let go. His body pressed more fully against mine. And for a moment, a terrifying, beautiful moment, I let myself believe I wasn't beyond saving. Later, I sat on the back porch in the fading light, Max beside me, his head resting on my bare foot, like some ancient ritual of forgiveness. I was wearing clean clothes now. I'd washed my face. I'd eaten a real meal, small victories, and I kept thinking, he didn't leave. When I yelled, when I cried, when I tried to push him away, he didn't leave. It hit me harder than it should have. Not because I didn't expect loyalty. Max had always been loyal. But because I had started to believe no one should be. I'd been the person people tolerated. The one who smiled too hard and talked too fast and said, "I'm fine," with desperation stitched between the words. But Max wasn't tolerating me. He was staying. That night, I lay on the floor beside his bed instead of sleeping in mine. I curled into his side like a child who needed the solidness of something real, something warm, something alive. I listened to his breathing. I counted it. One breath, then another, and another, and another. My heartbeat synced with his. And for once, I didn't dream. The next morning, I woke up to Max standing over me, wagging his tail gently, his eyes soft, his nose pressed to my cheek. The sun had broken through the blinds. The room was warm, and I was breathing, slowly, deeply, almost steadily. I reached up and scratched behind his ears. "Hey, old man." He leaned into the touch. "I'm sorry for pushing you away." He licked my hand once, and then nudged my shoulder with his nose. "I guess I'm not good at this," I whispered. He sat, watching me. Still. Ready. But maybe I don't have to be good at it. Maybe I just have to show up. Max gave a single approving huff, like that was enough. And maybe it was. That day, I opened the windows, I washed my sheets, I put on clean socks. Tiny things, insignificant on their own. But together, they felt like an offering, like a signal to myself. I'm still here. I took Max for a walk through the field. The same one where I'd nearly lost myself just a few days ago. But this time, the sky looked bluer. The air smelled cleaner. And the silence wasn't so heavy. He didn't walk ahead of me. He walked beside me. And I realized, for the first time in weeks, I wasn't afraid of being seen. Not by him, not by anyone. I heard my mom come home before I saw her. The slam of the front door. The clatter of keys in the bowl. The low hum of her voice talking to herself in the hallway like she always did. Max had already gotten up before I even reacted. He padded toward the door and sat, tail still, waiting. I sat on the floor, frozen. I wasn't ready, or maybe I was. And that was the problem. Because what came next wasn't about comfort. It was about truth, and truth always carried tension, especially when you've been hiding it in silence for months. "Leah?" Her voice floated from the hallway, warm but cautious. I wiped my hands on my jeans, even though they weren't dirty. "Yeah, I'm in here." She stepped into the kitchen and paused when she saw me. Her eyes swept over me quickly. The half-washed dishes, the open windows, Max lying at my feet like a loyal shadow. And then she smiled, hesitantly. "You look better." That word, better. It hit like a splinter, harmless on the surface, painful underneath. "I don't know if that's true," I said. She sat down across from me at the table. "You slept?" I nodded. "Eating anything?" "Some toast. A banana. Half a protein bar." She raised an eyebrow. A real meal might be a good sign. Max shifted his weight and leaned his head gently into my calf, grounding me. I took a breath, and then I said it. "I'm not okay." My mom blinked, the smile fading. Okay, I hear you. I looked away. My throat tightened. That panic attack wasn't a one-time thing, I added. It's been building for months. I didn't know how to tell anyone. I kept pretending I was fine, but I was falling apart. The silence between us was heavy. My ears rang. Max pressed harder against me. Not roughly, just enough to say I'm here. And I kept going. I stopped sleeping, stopped eating. I cried in public bathrooms more than I care to admit, but I smiled. I nodded. I submitted assignments. And everyone thought I was okay. Even me. For a while. Her face crumpled slightly. Leah. I shook my head. Don't say sorry. I didn't let you see it. I didn't let anyone see it. I reached down and ran my fingers along Max's back. But he knew. He knew before. I even did. He wouldn't let me disappear. She swallowed hard, looking at Max like he was something holy. I always thought he had a special sense about you. He never left, I whispered. Even when I yelled. Even when I pushed him away. He stayed. He laid on me when I couldn't breathe. He held me still when I was shaking. He looked at me like I was still whole. A tear slid down her cheek, and I wasn't done. I didn't just come home to rest, I said. I came home because I didn't trust myself to stay upright. Because I needed to feel real again. Because I was afraid that one of these days I'd just shut down completely. And no one would notice. Max's breathing was steady against me. I didn't need to look at him to know he wasn't going anywhere. My mom reached across the table slowly, carefully, like approaching a wounded animal. Her fingers touched mine, just barely. I see you now, she whispered. And somehow, for some reason, that broke something inside me. But in a good way. Not a collapse. A release. We didn't talk much after that. Not because there wasn't more to say, but because sometimes the heaviest truths need time to settle before they make room for words again. Max followed me to my room that night. He curled up at the foot of my bed, then stood, circled, and laid beside me instead. I didn't tell him to move. I didn't need to. I just let him be there. Because the truth is, he wasn't just holding me together anymore. He was holding space. The next morning, I decided to leave the house. It felt like a betrayal, not of myself, but of the strange, fragile world Max and I had built in that house. A world of silence and healing and unspoken warmth. But I needed to test the edges. See if I could exist in the world again without unraveling. Max sat at the front door like a statue. His eyes said, "Are you sure?" "I have to try," I whispered. He didn't move. I stepped outside. And for a moment, the panic was back. A ghost pressing at my chest, whispering that this was too soon. Too much. But then I turned. And he was sitting at the door, watching. Me, not crying, not barking, just watching. And I felt it again, the grounding weight of being seen. The store was small, familiar, a corner shop I used to visit as a kid. I walked past the rows of cereal and apples and canned soup, like I was learning how to move in public again. I made it halfway through before the ringing started in my ears. I froze near the freezer aisle. Cold air on my face. Heart rate spiking, gripped the cart so hard my knuckles turned white. A voice inside me screamed, "Leave, now, run." And then, in my mind, I saw him. Max, lying across my chest, breathing slowly, stillness, warmth, stay. I closed my eyes and inhaled slowly, counted to 4. Exhaled, counted, again. And when I opened my eyes, the world hadn't collapsed. Not yet. I picked up a carton of milk, walked to the register, paid, and walked out, still breathing. Back home, Max was waiting by the door. He stood when I walked in, trotted forward, and sat directly in front of me. I dropped the bag and knelt. He licked my face once, and then pressed his whole body against mine, and this time I didn't cry. I smiled. That night, I sat with my mom in the living room. The TV played quietly in the background, forgotten. Max was sprawled between us like a bridge, his head on my lap, his tail brushing her leg. "I think I want to talk to someone," I said. "A therapist?" "Yeah," she nodded. "I'll help you find one. I just don't want to pretend anymore." "You don't have to." Max sighed, long and heavy, as if he had been waiting for that too. And later, as the house grew dark and still, I stood at my bedroom door and looked down at him. "I'm scared," I said. He didn't move, but I think I'm ready. Stillness. And then, ever so gently, he walked forward and leaned into my legs. Not hard. Not heavy. Just enough. "I'm here. I'm not letting go. Not yet. Not ever." I didn't notice it at first. The way the air felt lighter. The way mornings didn't always come with a sense of dread. The way my hands stopped trembling when I touched the door handle. It crept in slowly, like spring after a long, brutal winter, barely visible at first, but undeniable once you started paying attention. I wasn't healed, not completely, but I was healing, and that, in itself, felt like a miracle. It had been nearly 2 months since the day I left campus. 2 months of long silences, tear-stained hoodies, half-finished conversations, and Max. Always Max. 2 months of his body curled beside mine, of his weight pressed against my chest when I couldn't breathe, of his stillness anchoring me back to the world. I'd started therapy. My mom had helped me find someone kind, someone who didn't ask for perfect words or immediate answers. I went twice a week. Some days I barely spoke. Some days I didn't stop. But every time I came home, Max was waiting at the door, like he'd never left it. Sometimes I wondered if he ever truly did. One morning, I woke up before the sun. Not from panic, not from a nightmare, just awake. The sky was still dark, the birds not yet singing, but I felt present, whole. In a way I hadn't for a long time. I sat up and looked at Max. He was still asleep, curled at the foot of my bed, his breathing slow and deep. And then I saw it, the slightest shake in his leg, the way his paws twitched, like running in a dream, his breathing hitching just slightly. Not painful, but different. Something shifted in my chest. "Max," I whispered. He opened his eyes slowly and lifted his head. And I knew. He was getting tired. Not just sleepy. Old. Not in a dramatic, tragic way. He was still moving fine. Still eating. Still pressing into me when I needed grounding. But there was a slowness now. A softness. A quiet I hadn't noticed until that morning. I reached for him, and he rested his head in my hand, and I made a promise right there in the dark. "You held on. For me, I'll hold on for you too." The days grew warmer. I started running again. Not far, just around the old field behind the house. Max would walk with me to the edge of the trees, then lie down and watch. His eyes never left me. Not once. It was like he was giving me space, but never distance. On the 5th therapy session, I told the truth out loud. I didn't want to be alive, I said. Not in a suicidal way, just in an absent way. I wanted to not exist. My therapist nodded. And now? I want to exist again, I said. I don't always know how, but I want to. Max was waiting at the front door when I came home. He didn't wag his tail. He just walked over, leaned into me, and stayed there. He knew. Of course he knew. One night, about a week later, something woke me around 2 a.m. Not a noise, a feeling. Sat up. Max wasn't beside me. Panic gripped me, cold and sharp, like a reflex I hadn't buried deep enough. I scrambled out of bed and rushed into the hallway, my heart in my throat. He was lying in the living room, in his favorite corner, by the window. The moonlight spilled over him like silver water. I knelt beside him. Max? He lifted his head slowly, blinked. His breath was steady, slower than usual, but not strained, just quiet. I laid down beside him and placed a hand on his side. He exhaled, deep and soft. Then, without a sound, he shifted his body against mine, the full weight of him pressing gently into my chest. Just like that first day. Just like the night I couldn't breathe. Tears welled in my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. I didn't want to disturb the moment. I just held him, and he held me back, until we both fell asleep right there on the floor. I woke up to sunlight, and Max, still beside me, still breathing, still holding on. But when he opened his eyes that morning, I saw it more clearly than ever. The end wasn't today, but it was close. I began writing again, journaling, poetry, fragments of things I hadn't touched since before the panic started. The words didn't always make sense, but they were mine again. And Max would lie beside me as I scribbled into notebooks, his head on my foot, or resting gently on my lap. I took pictures of him, quietly, without posing or asking him to do anything special. Just him, existing, being, loving me. They were the most beautiful photos I'd ever taken, because they weren't of a dog. They were of a life that saved mine. The final night came like the first, unexpectedly soft. He walked slowly that day, his steps careful, like the ground had become unfamiliar. I didn't ask anything of him, I just let him be. That evening, he curled beside me in bed, his head on my chest. I read aloud from a book I knew he couldn't understand, but it didn't matter. His breathing slowed, then steadied, then slowed again. I ran my fingers behind his ears and whispered, every thank you I hadn't found the courage to say. Thank you for not letting me disappear. Thank you for staying. Thank you for showing me I still mattered. I'll breathe on my own now. And I meant it. Every word. He didn't pass that night, but I knew he would soon. And when he finally did, 1 week later, in the quiet of a sunrise, with my arms around him and the birds singing outside the window, I didn't scream, didn't fall apart. I didn't collapse. I breathed. I let the air fill my chest, sharp and painful and full of life, because he had taught me how. Now, whenever I feel the weight pressing in, when the silence returns, or the fear begins to curl inside my chest again, I do what he taught me. I stop. I press my hand to my heart, and I breathe. Slow, deep, steady. Sometimes I even whisper his name, and somehow I still feel him beside me, not holding me down, not pinning me to the earth, but reminding me I can stand, I can stay, I can breathe, because he never let go until I could.